My sister said I'd never amount to anything more than a struggling teacher playing pretend at business. She had no idea I was quietly building the empire that would eventually employ her. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss.
The rejection email arrived at 6:47 a.m., delivered with the same cheerful ping as every other notification that slowly chipped away at my confidence. Thank you for your interest in the marketing director position at Bridgeport University. While your qualifications are impressive, we have decided to move forward with a candidate whose experience better aligns with our institutional needs. I set my coffee mug down carefully on the kitchen counter, watching steam rise from the surface like my dissipating hopes. Institutional needs. Translation: they wanted someone who'd played the academic game longer, someone who understood that innovation meant changing the font on last year's recruitment brochure. My phone buzzed against the granite countertop. Chelsea's name appeared, with her professionally perfect headshot, the one she used for LinkedIn, company newsletters, and every family gathering where someone might take a photo worth posting. "Morning, sis. Saw the Bridgeport posting got filled. Mom mentioned you applied. Don't worry, something will come up. Maybe it's time to consider opportunities outside academia. I know people. Kissy face." The casual cruelty of it hit me like ice water. She knew about the rejection before I'd even processed it myself, which meant she'd been monitoring the job posting, probably through her network of corporate contacts who treated university hiring like a spectator sport. I typed and deleted 3 different responses before settling on "thanks" for the concern. Her reply came instantly: "Always looking out for my little sis." Heart emoji. Little sis. I was 31 years old with a master's degree and 5 years of professional experience, but to Chelsea, I would always be the younger sister who needed guidance toward more practical choices. The familiar ritual of Sunday breakfast at Mom and Dad's house had evolved into a weekly performance review where I consistently received failing grades. I found myself standing in the doorway of the kitchen where I had eaten countless bowls of cereal before school, watching Mom arrange fresh flowers in a vase that cost more than my monthly grocery budget. "Riley, perfect timing. I was just telling your father about Chelsea's promotion." Dad looked up from his newspaper, reading glasses perched on his nose. "Senior account executive. That's quite an achievement for someone her age." "It really is," Mom agreed, her voice carrying that particular tone reserved for discussing Chelsea's accomplishments. "She's handling the Grandview Hotel's account now. Do you know what that's worth annually?" I poured myself coffee from the machine that had been a housewarming gift to my parents from Chelsea. Everything in this kitchen seemed to bear her mark somehow. The expensive olive oil, the imported pasta, the wine rack filled with bottles that cost more than I spent on entertainment in a month. "I'm sure it's substantial," I said, settling into the chair I had occupied since childhood. $2.7 million, Dad announced, folding his paper with satisfaction. "Your sister is responsible for managing a $2.7 million account." The number hung in the air like incense, something to be revered and admired. I sipped my coffee and tried to calculate how many community college students I could fund with scholarships for that amount. How many literacy programs? How many lives changed through education access? "That's wonderful for her," I managed. Mom sat down across from me, her expression shifting to what I'd learned to recognize as her concerned parent face. "How's the job search going, honey? Any responses to your applications?" The Bridgeport rejection felt fresh again, a wound prodded too soon. Still waiting to hear back from most places. "You know," Mom said carefully, "Chelsea mentioned that Morrison and Associates might be expanding their client services team. She could probably arrange an informational interview." "I'm looking for academic positions, Mom. Higher education is where I want to build my career." Dad lowered his newspaper completely. "Are you sure that's wise? The job market in academia is incredibly competitive. Maybe it's time to consider other options." Other options. The phrase that had followed me since college graduation, always delivered with loving concern that felt increasingly like gentle violence. I love what I do, I said simply. Of course you do, Mom replied quickly. Teaching is important work. But there's something to be said for financial security, career advancement, building toward a real future. A real future. As opposed to the imaginary one I was apparently constructing with my degrees and professional experience and genuine passion for education. Chelsea started in an entry-level position just 4 years ago, Dad continued. Look where she is now. That's the beauty of the corporate world. Clear advancement tracks, measurable success metrics. I wanted to tell them about the impact metrics I'd developed for my financial literacy workshops, about the first-generation college students who credited my programs with helping them navigate university systems, about the working mothers who'd earned certificates that doubled their incomes. But I'd learned that those victories didn't translate into the kind of success my family understood. The front door opened with Chelsea's distinctive rhythm, confident heel clicks across the hardwood floor, keys jingling with the sound of someone who owned quality accessories. She appeared in the kitchen doorway like a magazine advertisement for professional success, carrying coffee from the expensive place downtown and wearing a blazer that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. "Morning, family. Meeting without me," she asked with a bright smile, kissing Mom's cheek and squeezing Dad's shoulder. "Just catching up," Mom said. "Riley was telling us about her job search." "Oh, still looking? I thought for sure you'd have found something by now with your qualifications." The qualifications carried just enough emphasis to suggest that my qualifications were somehow insufficient for the positions I was pursuing. The academic job market moves slowly. Most positions don't start until fall semester. "Right, of course," Chelsea nodded knowingly. Though I have to say, waiting around for the perfect academic position seems risky. What if nothing materializes? Something will. But what if it doesn't? I mean, you've been out of work for 3 months now. Aren't you concerned about the gap in your resume? I had been working, consulting for 2 small nonprofits, developing training materials, taking on freelance projects. But none of that seemed to count as real employment in Chelsea's assessment. I've been staying busy with consulting work.
That's great, she said with the enthusiasm of someone praising a child's art project. But consulting isn't quite the same as a steady position with benefits, right? I just worry about your long-term financial stability. Dad folded his newspaper completely. Chelsea makes a good point. Maybe it's time to consider expanding your search beyond academia. There are so many transferable skills, Chelsea continued. Your communication abilities, your project management experience. Corporate training positions would be perfect for someone with your background. Corporate training. The suggestion felt like being offered a consolation prize after losing a competition I hadn't known I was entered in. I appreciate the concern, but I'm committed to finding the right opportunity in higher education. Chelsea exchanged a glance with Mom that I wasn't supposed to notice. The look that said they'd discussed this privately, that they'd reached conclusions about my stubbornness and unrealistic expectations. "Of course," Chelsea said smoothly. "I just want to make sure you're being open to all possibilities. Sometimes the best opportunities come from unexpected directions." "Tell Riley about the Grandview presentation," Mom suggested, clearly eager to change the subject to more comfortable territory. Chelsea's face lit up with genuine excitement. "Oh, it was incredible. We presented to their entire executive board, 12 people in a conference room that overlooks downtown, floor-to-ceiling windows, the works. I led the presentation for our team." She pulled out her phone, swiping to a photo of herself standing confidently beside a projection screen, gesturing toward charts and graphs while a room full of suited executives watched attentively. "We proposed a complete rebranding strategy. New logo, updated marketing materials, social media campaigns, the full package. And they loved it. Approved the entire proposal on the spot." "How exciting," I said, and meant it. Despite everything, I was proud of her success. The best part is that if this campaign performs well, Grandview is considering expanding nationally. We could be looking at a $12 million account within 2 years. Dad whistled appreciatively. $12 million? That's generational wealth territory. "Well, it's not like I'd personally see $12 million, Chelsea laughed.
But my commission on an account that size would be substantial.
A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. She didn't need to specify the amount. We all understood that substantial meant more money than I'd ever seen in one place. "I'm so proud of you," Mom said, reaching across to squeeze Chelsea's hand. "You've worked so hard to get where you are." "It really is amazing what you can accomplish when you focus on realistic goals," Dad added. Realistic goals. The phrase hit me like a physical blow, delivered with such casual certainty that it took my breath away. "What about you, Riley?" Chelsea asked with apparent innocence. "Any exciting projects you're working on?" I thought about the curriculum I'd been developing for adult learners, the research proposal I'd submitted to 3 different education journals, the grant application that could fund literacy programs for immigrant communities. "I'm working on a few different initiatives. A curriculum design project, some research writing." "That sounds fulfilling," Chelsea said, in the tone people use when discussing volunteer work. "Are any of them paid opportunities?" The question hung in the air like smoke from a snuffed candle. "One of them is a paid consulting project," I said, quietly. "How much?" Dad asked with the directness that had become familiar. "Dad?" "I'm just curious about the financial viability of this consulting approach." I took a deep breath. $1,500 for a 3-month project. The silence that followed was deafening. Chelsea tried to hide her reaction, but I caught the slight widening of her eyes, the quick glance at Mom. $1,500 for 3 months of work? Dad asked carefully. "It's specialized curriculum development. It's not just about the money." "Riley," Mom interrupted gently, "that's $500 a month. You can't live on that." "I know it's not sustainable long term, but it's meaningful work that could impact hundreds of students." "Meaningful work that pays nothing isn't work," Chelsea said softly. "It's charity." The word hit me like a slap. Charity. I'm building a portfolio, gaining experience. "You already have experience," Dad pointed out. "You have a master's degree. You shouldn't be working for charity wages." Chelsea leaned forward, her expression earnest and concerned. "Riley, I say this because I love you, but you're undervaluing yourself. You're accepting projects that don't pay what you're worth because you're afraid to compete in the real marketplace." The real marketplace? Corporate positions, government roles, places where your skills would be compensated appropriately. You're hiding in academia because it feels safe, but safe isn't serving you financially. I stared at her, this person who shared my DNA but seemed to inhabit a completely different universe, a universe where the value of work was measured solely by the salary it generated, where impact was irrelevant if it couldn't be quantified in quarterly reports. "I'm not hiding anywhere. I'm pursuing the career I want." "But is it pursuing you back?" Chelsea asked gently. "Because from the outside, it looks like you're chasing something that doesn't want to be caught." I stood up from the table, my chair scraping against the floor with more force than I'd intended. "I should get going. I have work to do." "Riley!" Mom called as I gathered my purse. "Stay for lunch. I'm making your favorite pasta." "Thanks, but I really do have deadlines." Chelsea stood too, following me toward the front door. "Hey, I didn't mean to upset you. I'm just concerned." "I know what you meant." She touched my arm gently. "I want to see you succeed, Riley. We all do. But sometimes success means being willing to adjust your expectations." Adjust your expectations. The final blow, delivered with a smile and wrapped in sisterly concern. I looked at her, this polished, confident, surrounded by the approval and admiration I'd been chasing my entire life, and felt something shift inside me. Not anger, though that was there too. Something colder and more determined. "Maybe you're right," I said quietly. "Maybe it is time to adjust my expectations." She smiled, clearly pleased that her intervention had worked.
I'm glad you're open to considering other options. I really do know people who could help. I'm sure you do. As I drove home through the suburban streets where we'd grown up, past the elementary school where we'd both learned to read, past the park where we'd played on summer afternoons, I felt the weight of 31 years of being the sister who needed guidance, who made impractical choices, who couldn't quite figure out how to succeed in the way that mattered. But for the first time, instead of feeling diminished by that weight, I felt motivated by it. Chelsea was right about one thing. It was time to adjust my expectations. Just not in the way she'd intended. The coffee in the coffee lounge tasted like disappointment and broken budgets, but it was free and caffeinated, which made it perfect for my current situation. I sat at the corner table grading quizzes while Professor Jeanette Whitmore complained about the new enrollment tracking system to anyone within earshot. Completely counterintuitive. 30 years I've been doing this job, and now they want me to learn computer programs designed by people who've never set foot in a classroom. Dr. Michael Torres nodded sympathetically while updating something on his tablet. The administration seems to think technology will solve all our problems without addressing the fundamental issues. What fundamental issues? I asked, looking up from a particularly creative interpretation of market segmentation theory. Budget constraints, outdated facilities, the fact that we're competing with four-year universities for students who see community college as a consolation prize. But sure, a new database will fix everything. I set down my pen, an idea beginning to form. What if we approached it differently? Instead of competing with universities, what if we positioned ourselves as the practical choice for career advancement?
The conversation stopped. Both professors looked at me with the patient expressions reserved for new faculty who hadn't yet learned how things worked. "Riley Beer," Janet said kindly, "we've tried positioning campaigns before. The community isn't interested in practical. They want prestige. But what if we could demonstrate actual return on investment, track our graduates' career outcomes, showcase their success stories, create a campaign around real results rather than theoretical prestige?" Dr. Torres adjusted his glasses. "That would require significant data collection and analysis. The administration would never approve the resources for something that ambitious." "What if it didn't require additional resources? What if we could do it with existing tools and volunteer coordination?" Another pause. I watched their faces carefully, seeing the same expression I'd encountered in family dinners and job interviews. The look that said my enthusiasm was charming, but impractical. "It's a nice idea," Janet said finally, "but institutional change moves slowly here. Maybe focus on your teaching responsibilities for now, and once you have more experience with how things work." The suggestion trailed off, but the message was clear. Stay in your lane until you understand your place. I was comparing pasta prices when I heard familiar laughter from the next aisle. Chelsea's voice carried easily over the ambient store noise, discussing weekend plans with someone I didn't recognize. Honestly, the conference was incredible. 3 days in San Francisco, all expenses paid, meetings with executives from tech companies I've only dreamed of working with. I found myself moving closer, pretending to examine marinara sauce labels while listening. The networking opportunities alone made it worthwhile. I exchanged cards with the VP of marketing at a startup that just secured $20 million in Series B funding. They're expanding their client services team. "That sounds amazing," her companion replied. "You must love the travel opportunities." "It's definitely a perk. Next month, I'm presenting our proposal to potential clients in Chicago, then flying to Los Angeles for the Grandview Hotel's executive retreat. Sometimes I can't believe this is my actual job." I stood frozen in the pasta sauce aisle, holding a jar of generic marinara while my sister described a life that seemed to exist in a different universe from mine. Conference trips to San Francisco, executive retreats in Los Angeles, business cards exchanged with startup VPs. My last business trip had been a drive to Springfield for a community college marketing conference where I'd presented to 12 people in a windowless room at a Holiday Inn Express. "Riley?" I turned to find Chelsea approaching with a shopping cart filled with organic everything and wine that cost more than my weekly food budget. What a coincidence! I was just telling Sandra about my San Francisco trip. She gestured to a woman about our age, dressed in the kind of casually expensive clothes that suggested a comfortable life. Sandra, this is my sister Riley. She teaches marketing at Riverside Community College. Sandra smiled politely. How interesting! Chelsea's told me so much about your family. All good things, I hope. I wondered exactly what Chelsea had shared. Oh, absolutely. She mentioned you were between positions recently. Have you found something new? Between positions. The phrase stung because it wasn't technically incorrect, but it suggested a kind of professional instability that made me sound like I couldn't hold down a job. I'm teaching at Riverside now, I clarified. It's a great position. Community college, Chelsea added quickly. Riley's passionate about accessible education. The way she said accessible education made it sound like charity work rather than professional achievement. That's wonderful, Sandra said with the enthusiasm people reserve for discussing worthy causes they have no intention of supporting. Teaching is such important work. Important but not impressive. Meaningful but not lucrative. The subtext was clear in her tone. I should get going, I said, suddenly anxious to escape this conversation. Good to meet you, Sandra. You too. And Chelsea, don't forget to send me that contact information we discussed. As I walked towards the checkout, I heard Chelsea say, Of course, I think your background would be perfect for their marketing coordinator position. I sat on my couch with a glass of wine that cost $8 and tasted like it, scrolling through Chelsea's Instagram stories from her San Francisco conference. Photos of her in hotel lobbies that looked like art galleries, dining at restaurants where entrees cost more than my daily food budget, posing with colleagues against backdrops of the Golden Gate Bridge and downtown skylines. Each image was captioned with humble gratitude, blessed to represent Morrison and Associates at the Digital Marketing Innovation Summit, grateful for opportunities to learn from industry leaders, feeling inspired by today's sessions on disruptive marketing strategies. The comment section was a steady stream of admiration from family members, college friends, and professional contacts. Mom had liked every single photo and left encouraging comments. Dad had shared 2 of them to his Facebook page with captions about how proud he was of his successful daughter. I scrolled back through the past few months of Chelsea's posts, looking for any mention of me or my work. The closest I could find was a group family photo from Easter with a caption about being grateful for family time with all my loved ones. No individual recognition, no acknowledgement of my new teaching position, no celebration of my consulting projects. My Instagram feed told a different story. Photos of my classroom setup, pictures of student projects, occasional shots of the books I was reading for research. My posts averaged 12 likes, mostly from college friends and a few former colleagues. Chelsea never liked any of them. The disparity was stark enough to make me wonder if we were actually living in the same reality. My phone buzzed with activity in the family group chat that had become Chelsea's unofficial fan club. Mom, saw Chelsea's photos from San Francisco. So proud of our jet-setting executive. Dad, that conference looked impressive. I hope she made good connections. Uncle Robert, way to go, Chelsea, living the corporate dream. Aunt Linda, can't wait to hear about all the exciting opportunities coming your way. Chelsea, thanks everyone. It was an incredible experience. Feeling grateful for the support system that got me here.
I stared at my phone, waiting for someone to ask about my new teaching position or the grant proposal I'd submitted last week. The conversation continued around me, a celebration of Chelsea's achievements that left no room for acknowledgement of anyone else's accomplishments. Finally, I typed, "Sounds like an amazing trip. Congrats on the presentation." Chelsea, "Thanks, sis. Heart." That was it. No follow-up questions about my work, no interest in my projects, no suggestion that we catch up to hear about my recent developments. I met Diana Reeves at the coffee shop near campus, grateful for a conversation with someone who understood the challenges of building a career in education. Diana had left community college teaching 2 years earlier for a position with the state education department, and I hoped she might have insights about transitioning to higher-level roles. "The work at the state level is interesting," she explained,
But sometimes I miss the direct student interaction. There's something magical about watching adult learners discover they're capable of more than they imagined. Exactly. That's what makes this work meaningful to me. Diana stirred her latte thoughtfully. How's your family handling the career change? My parents still don't really understand what I do. They understand that I teach. Whether they value teaching is another question entirely. The when are you getting a real job family. More like the why don't you want financial security family. My sister works in corporate marketing and makes about 4 times what I make. Every family gathering becomes an indirect comparison. Diana nodded knowingly. The thing is, people who've never worked in education don't understand the complexity of what we do. They see teaching as talking to people about subjects you already know. They don't see the curriculum development, the assessment design, the individual student support, the research component, or the potential for advancement and leadership within the field. Exactly. There's this assumption that teaching is what you do when you can't succeed in business, rather than understanding that education is its own professional track with its own measures of success. I felt validated in a way I hadn't experienced in months. Someone who understood that my career choice was strategic rather than settling. The irony, Diana continued, is that educators often have skills that translate beautifully to other sectors: project management, communication, data analysis, program development. We're just not good at marketing ourselves in business terms. Marketing ourselves in business terms. The phrase stuck with me as we parted ways and I drove back to campus. Dr. Sanders, the Dean of Academic Affairs, had requested a meeting to discuss my first semester performance. I sat across from her desk in an office decorated with awards for educational innovation and leadership, hoping for constructive feedback about my teaching approach. Riley, I wanted to touch base about how you're settling in. Your student evaluations have been quite positive. Thank you. I've been enjoying the work. I did want to address some feedback from colleagues about your enthusiasm for institutional change. My stomach dropped. What kind of feedback? Nothing negative necessarily, but there's been some concern that you might be overreaching in terms of proposing new initiatives before fully understanding our established systems. I see. I appreciate innovation, and fresh perspectives are valuable, but we've found that new faculties sometimes underestimate the complexity of implementing change in higher education. There are budget considerations, bureaucratic processes, accreditation requirements. The familiar refrain, your ideas are nice, but you don't understand how things really work. I understand there are constraints. I was hoping to work within those constraints to find creative solutions. And that's commendable, but perhaps it would be better to focus on mastering your teaching responsibilities this year, and then we can discuss broader initiatives once you have more institutional experience. Dr. Sanders smiled kindly, but the message was clear. Stay in your lane until we decide you're ready for more responsibility. Of course, I said. I appreciate the guidance. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with a notebook, writing down every instance I could remember of being told to manage my expectations, moderate my ambitions, or focus on more realistic goals. The list filled 3 pages. Family. Teaching is nice, but what about financial security? Colleagues. Great ideas, but institutional change is complicated. Administrators. Focus on teaching first, innovation later. Job interviewers. Your background is impressive, but we need someone with more traditional experience. Every conversation followed the same pattern. Acknowledgement of my capabilities, followed by reasons why those capabilities weren't quite right for whatever opportunity I was pursuing. The more I wrote, the clearer the pattern became. These weren't isolated instances of constructive feedback. This was systematic diminishment disguised as helpful guidance. Chelsea's success wasn't just about her own achievements. It was built on a foundation of everyone around her believing that conventional success was the only success that mattered. My unconventional path wasn't just different, it was treated as evidence of poor judgment and unrealistic expectations. But what if my expectations weren't unrealistic? What if they were just threatening to people who'd built their identities around a belief that this was how success was supposed to look? For the first time in months, I felt something other than self-doubt. I felt curious. What would happen if I stopped trying to fit into their definitions of appropriate ambition and started building something entirely on my own terms? The fluorescent lights in Conference Room B flickered like dying stars as I watched 12 adult learners file out after my Financial Literacy for Career Advancement workshop. Maria Gonzalez, a single mother of 3 who worked 2 jobs, lingered by my table. "Professor Henderson, this stuff about building credit, nobody ever explained it like that before. I always thought credit cards were just debt traps." They can be, but they're also tools when used strategically. The key is understanding the system instead of being afraid of it. She clutched the workbook I had created, filled with practical exercises and real-world applications. "My oldest daughter starts college next year. I want to make sure she knows this before she gets campus credit card offers."
After Maria left, I packed up my materials in the empty conference room, feeling the familiar mixture of fulfillment and frustration. These workshops mattered. I could see the impact in real time. People gaining confidence, asking smarter questions, making connections between financial concepts and their actual lives. But the workshops were voluntary, unfunded, and attended by the same dozen people each session. Meanwhile, the college spent thousands on marketing consultants who recommended strategies like enhanced digital presence without understanding our community's actual needs. I arrived at Sunday dinner to find an orchestrated ambush disguised as family concern. Chelsea was already there, sitting at the kitchen table with what looked suspiciously like printed research materials. Mom and Dad flanked her like supporting actors in a carefully rehearsed performance. "Riley, perfect timing," Mom said with forced brightness. "We wanted to talk to you about something important." I set my purse down slowly, recognizing the setup. "What's going on?" Chelsea gestured to the papers in front of her. "I've been doing some research into career transition strategies for people in your situation." "My situation?" "Well, you know, underemployed professionals looking to maximize their potential in more lucrative fields." Dad cleared his throat. "The numbers are pretty compelling, Riley. Even entry-level corporate positions offer significantly better advancement opportunities than academia." I sat down across from them, feeling like a defendant facing a tribunal. "You've been researching my career behind my back?" "Not behind your back," Chelsea said quickly. "We're worried about your future. You're 31, and you're still making less than I made as a junior account coordinator. Money isn't the only measure of success." "But it's an important one," Mon interjected. "Retirement planning, home ownership, starting a family someday, these things require financial stability." Chelsea spread several printed pages across the table, like evidence in a case I didn't know I was defending. "Look at this salary comparison. Marketing coordinator positions start at $55,000 annually with clear advancement tracks. Account management roles can reach 6 figures within 5 years. I'm not interested in account management." "But you could be good at it," Dad said earnestly. "You have all the skills: communication, project management, analytical thinking. You're just applying them in a field with limited earning potential." I stared at the salary charts and job descriptions Chelsea had assembled, each one representing a future where I abandoned everything I cared about in exchange for financial security that would make my family proud. What if I like what I'm doing?
Do you, though? Chelsea asked gently. I mean, really? Because from the outside, it looks like you're constantly stressed about money, constantly applying for jobs that don't materialize, constantly having to justify your choices. The accuracy of her observation hit like a physical blow. Those workshops you run, they're unpaid, right? You're essentially working for free because you love the impact. But what if you could have the same impact while also building financial security? It's not the same thing. Why not? Corporate training programs help people develop professionally. Client education initiatives create real value. You could be designing programs that change lives while also earning a living wage. I looked around the table at 3 people who genuinely believed they were helping me, who couldn't understand that their solution felt like death by 1,000 compromises. I need some air, I said, standing abruptly. I sat in my car in my parents' driveway, hands gripping the steering wheel as 17 years of carefully managed expectations crashed over me like a wave. Every family dinner, every concerned phone call, every gentle suggestion that I consider more practical options had been building toward this moment. They weren't trying to help me succeed. They were trying to help me surrender. My phone buzzed with a text from Chelsea. I know this feels overwhelming, but we really do want what's best for you. The Morrison position I mentioned is still open if you want me to make a call. I stared at the message, understanding finally that this wasn't about my happiness or fulfillment or even my financial security. This was about their comfort. My unconventional path made them nervous because it suggested that their conventional definitions of success might not be the only valid ones. A second text arrived. You don't have to decide tonight. Just think about it, okay? We love you. But I had decided. Not about the Morrison position, but about something much more fundamental. I was done trying to earn approval from people who were fundamentally incapable of understanding the value of what I was building. Back home, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open and a cup of tea growing cold beside me. Instead of grading papers or updating my resume, I opened a new document and began typing. Strategic Plan for Educational Innovation Consulting. The words appeared on the screen as if they'd been waiting years to be written. I spent the next 4 hours outlining a business concept that had been forming in the back of my mind for months. A consulting firm that helped organizations develop meaningful educational programs for adult learners. Not corporate training designed to increase productivity, not academic programs constrained by institutional bureaucracy, something entirely different. Education as empowerment, delivered with the efficiency and results focus of the business world. The financial literacy workshops I'd been running for free could be packaged and licensed to employers, unions, community organizations. The career advancement curriculum I developed could be adapted for companies wanting to invest in employee development. The data analysis skills I'd learned in graduate school could be applied to measuring real impact rather than arbitrary academic metrics. By 3 a.m., I had a 20-page business plan complete with market analysis, revenue projections, and implementation timelines. For the first time in months, I felt electrically alive with possibility. I found Dr. Sanders in her office Tuesday morning, reviewing budget reports with the resigned expression of someone managing perpetual scarcity. Riley, what can I do for you? I wanted to give you my notice. I'll be leaving at the end of the semester. She looked up sharply. Leaving? Did you find another teaching position? I'm starting my own consulting business, educational program development for organizations that want to invest in adult learning. Dr. Sanders set down her papers completely. That's quite a leap. Are you sure you've thought this through? I've been thinking about it for months. I have clients lined up and a clear business plan. But you're giving up tenure track eligibility, health benefits, the security of institutional employment.
for the opportunity to do work that matters without bureaucratic constraints. She studied me carefully. I have to say I'm surprised. You seemed committed to academic career development. I am committed to education. I'm just choosing a different platform for that commitment. The conversation felt surreal. 6 months ago, I would have been devastated to leave academia. Now it felt like escaping a cage I'd mistaken for shelter. I called Chelsea from the coffee shop near campus, knowing this conversation would set the tone for everything that followed. "Riley, I was hoping you'd call. Did you think about what we discussed Sunday?" "I did. I'm not taking the Morrison position." A pause. "Okay, but you'll consider other options, right? I have several contacts." "I'm not considering any corporate positions, Chelsea. I'm starting my own business." Silence. "Your own business? Doing what?" "Educational consulting, helping organizations develop programs for adult learners." "Riley." Her voice carried the patient tone I'd heard my entire life. "Starting a business is incredibly risky. Most small businesses fail within the first year. Most small businesses also don't have owners with advanced degrees in their field and 5 years of relevant experience. But the financial uncertainty, the lack of benefits, the isolation of working alone? Will it all be worth it if I'm building something I actually believe in?" Another pause. "I just don't want to see you make a mistake you'll regret later." "The only mistake I'd regret is spending the rest of my life trying to fit into someone else's definition of success." After we hung up, I sat in the coffee shop feeling lighter than I had in years. Not because the conversation had gone well, but because for the first time I'd chosen my own path without seeking permission or validation. The corner of my living room transformed overnight into mission control. I'd moved my dining table against the wall, creating a makeshift desk where I spread client proposals, curriculum outlines, and financial projections. 2 monitors flanked my laptop, one displaying my growing client spreadsheet, the other cycling through research on corporate training markets. My first client came through Diana's recommendation, Riverside Manufacturing, a mid-sized company whose employees were struggling with basic financial literacy. Their HR director, Patricia Kim, had attended one of my community workshops and recognized the potential for workplace application. "We're hemorrhaging talent to companies offering financial wellness programs," Patricia explained during our initial video call. "Our employees are stressed about money, making poor financial decisions, and it's affecting productivity." The contract was modest, $15,000 to develop and deliver a 6-week financial literacy program for 50 employees. But it was proof of concept, validation that my approach had commercial value beyond academic settings. I rented a small office in the local WeWork, partly for professional credibility, but mainly for the psychological separation between Riley, the former teacher, and Riley, the entrepreneur. The space hummed with ambition, startups in every conference room, phone calls about venture funding echoing from glass-walled offices, the constant energy of people building something from nothing. My second client emerged from an unexpected source. Marcus Chen, a friend from graduate school who'd moved into HR leadership at Regional Credit Union, reached out after seeing my LinkedIn announcement about launching educational impact solutions. "We need to upskill our customer service team on financial products, but traditional corporate training isn't working. Your approach to adult learning could be exactly what we need," he explained over coffee. The credit union contract was larger, $35,000 for a comprehensive program covering product knowledge, customer psychology, and communication skills. More importantly, it demonstrated versatility. I wasn't just the financial literacy consultant anymore. I was becoming someone who could translate complex information into practical skills for diverse populations. While Chelsea attended networking events at downtown hotels, I spent evenings in coffee shops in my WeWork office developing curricula that treated adult learners like the intelligent, experienced people they were, rather than empty vessels to be filled with information. The Riverside Manufacturing program launched with a pilot group of 20 employees. Instead of PowerPoint presentations about budgeting basics, I designed interactive workshops where participants analyzed their own financial situations and developed personalized strategies.
Rather than lecturing about retirement planning, I brought in employees who'd successfully navigated major financial decisions to share their experiences. The response was immediate and measurable. Post-program surveys showed 85% of participants felt significantly more confident about financial decision-making. More importantly, Patricia reported a noticeable decrease in requests for paycheck advances and an increase in 401k enrollment. "This isn't just training," Patricia told me during our debrief meeting. "This is life-changing education. We want to extend the program to all 200 employees." The credit union project required a different approach. Customer service representatives needed to understand complex financial products well enough to explain them clearly to members with varying levels of financial literacy. Traditional training focused on product features and compliance requirements. My program emphasized understanding customer needs and translating technical information into accessible language. I spent a week shadowing customer service representatives, listening to actual member interactions, and identifying the gaps between what training taught and what the job required. The curriculum I developed was based on real scenarios rather than theoretical examples. "Most training programs teach us what products do," explained Jennifer Walsh, a 10-year customer service veteran. "Your program taught us how to figure out what members actually need and how to explain it so they feel confident rather than confused." The credit union's member satisfaction scores increased by 12% in the first quarter after program implementation. More significantly, product sales increased by 23% because representatives were having authentic conversations about financial needs rather than pushing specific products. Success bred opportunity faster than I'd anticipated. Word spread through professional networks I'd built during my academic career. A community health center wanted workshops on medical financial literacy for patients navigating insurance and payment options. A manufacturing company needed leadership development programs for supervisors without college degrees. A nonprofit organization sought training for staff working with clients in the financial crisis. Each project required customized solutions, but the underlying approach remained consistent. Respect adult learners' intelligence, connect new information to existing experience, and focus on practical application rather than theoretical knowledge. I hired my first contractor, Sarah Martinez, a graphic designer who specialized in educational materials. Together, we developed visual frameworks that made complex concepts accessible without being condescending. Our materials looked professional, but felt human, a balance most corporate training programs never achieved. The results spoke for themselves in ways that academic assessments never could. Riverside Manufacturing extended my contract and asked me to develop programs for their other facilities. Regional Credit Union recommended me to their industry association, leading to contracts with 3 additional financial institutions. The Community Health Center saw patient satisfaction scores increase by 10% and billing disputes decrease after implementing medical financial literacy workshops. But the real validation came from participants themselves. Maria Gonzalez, who'd attended my original community college workshops, was now a supervisor at Riverside Manufacturing. She approached me after a training session with news that felt like victory. Ms. Henderson, I used what you taught me about credit building to qualify for a mortgage. My kids are going to have their own rooms for the first time." Stories like Maria's filled a folder on my desk labeled Impact Documentation, not because I needed to prove anything to myself, but because I was learning that success in business required different metrics than success in academia. Client renewals, revenue growth, and participant outcomes were creating a portfolio of credibility that opened doors to larger opportunities. By month 6, I was turning down projects. The demand exceeded my capacity, even with contracted help. I faced a choice that would have seemed impossible a year ago: expand the business or maintain its current manageable size. I spent an evening creating a strategic plan for Educational Impact Solutions' next phase. The vision was ambitious but achievable: a consulting firm that specialized in transforming how organizations approached adult education and professional development. Instead of generic corporate training, we'd offer customized programs based on learning science and real-world application. The financial projections were encouraging.
Year 1 revenue was tracking toward $180,000, 3 times my former teaching salary. More importantly, client retention was 100%, and referrals were generating 70% of new business. I was building something sustainable. The most satisfying aspect of this period wasn't the financial success or professional validation. It was the quiet satisfaction of working alone, making decisions based on my own judgment rather than committee consensus, succeeding or failing based on the quality of my work rather than my ability to navigate institutional politics. Chelsea's corporate success required constant networking, office politics, and adherence to company strategies she didn't control. My success depended on understanding client needs and delivering results that improved people's lives and work experiences.
While she attended conferences to learn about marketing trends, I was creating marketing solutions. While she managed accounts other people had developed, I was building relationships with clients who sought me out specifically for my expertise.
The irony wasn't lost on me. By stepping away from the security of institutional employment, I'd found more stability than I'd ever experienced in traditional jobs. By stopping the pursuit of conventional success, I'd created something that exceeded conventional expectations. And the best part? My family had no idea what I was actually building. The Adult Learning Association's annual conference buzzed with the energy of 800 education professionals from across the Midwest. I walked through the exhibition hall, past booths displaying corporate training platforms and academic assessment tools, feeling like an outsider, observing a world I'd once desperately wanted to join. My presentation was scheduled for 2 p.m. in Conference Room C, Bridging Corporate Training and Community Education, a case study in practical application. 12 months ago, I would have been thrilled just to be accepted as a presenter. Now, as the founder of Educational Impact Solutions with 18 months of client success behind me, I felt different. Not desperate for validation, but curious about connection. Riley Henderson? I turned to find Dr. Amanda Foster, whose research on adult learning motivation I'd cited in graduate school. She extended her hand with a warm smile. I've been following your work with Educational Impact Solutions. Your approach to financial literacy programming is exactly what our field needs more of. Thank you. I've admired your research for years. Would you have time for coffee after your presentation? I'm working on a project that might interest you. 47 people filled the conference room, a mix of community college faculty, corporate trainers, and nonprofit educators. I'd presented to larger audiences, but never to peers who understood the nuances of what I was attempting to accomplish. Traditional corporate training treats adult learners like empty vessels to be filled with information, I began, clicking a slide showing typical training evaluation metrics. We measure seat time, completion rates, and satisfaction scores, but we rarely measure actual behavior change or long-term impact. I walked them through 3 client case studies: Riverside Manufacturing's financial literacy program, Regional Credit Union's customer service transformation, and Metropolitan Health Center's medical financial literacy initiative. Each story included specific data on participant outcomes, business results, and sustained behavior change. The key insight, I explained, is that adult learners don't need to be taught. They need to be equipped. They bring decades of life experience to every learning situation. Our job is to help them connect new information to existing knowledge in ways that enable immediate application. During the Q&A, a hand shot up from the middle of the room. This sounds expensive to develop. How do you make the business case to organizations operating on tight budgets? The programs typically pay for themselves within 6 months through improved performance, reduced turnover, or increased productivity. Riverside Manufacturing calculated that their financial literacy program saved them $47,000 in the first year just from reduced paycheck advance requests and improved retirement plan participation. Another hand, how do you scale this approach? Customization is expensive. We've developed a framework that allows for customization within standardized modules. Think of it as mass customization rather than mass production.
The underlying learning science remains consistent, but the applications adapt to specific organizational needs. Dr. Foster and I found a quiet corner in the hotel coffee shop, surrounded by conference attendees networking over overpriced lattes and industry gossip. "She'll be direct," she said, pulling out a tablet. "I'm leading a research initiative funded by the Department of Labor to develop evidence-based models for workplace learning. We have a 3-year, $2.8 million grant to study programs that demonstrate measurable impact on both individual and organizational outcomes." I set down my coffee carefully. "That sounds like important work." "Your approach is exactly what we're trying to validate and scale. We want to partner with practitioners who are already seeing results, document what works, and create replicable models for national implementation." She swiped through slides showing the research design. A multi-site study tracking participant outcomes across diverse industries with rigorous data collection and longitudinal follow-up. "We're looking for practitioner researchers to lead implementation sites. It would involve working with 5 organizations over 3 years, documenting every aspect of program development and delivery, and co-authoring the final research publication." "What kind of compensation are we talking about?" "Each site lead receives $150,000 annually for 3 years, plus research support and travel funding. But more importantly, you'd be helping establish the evidence base for transforming how America approaches workplace education."
I stared at her, processing numbers that dwarfed anything I'd imagined possible. Not just the money, though $450,000 over 3 years would provide financial security I'd never experienced, but the opportunity to influence policy and practice at a national level. When do you need a decision? Applications are due in 6 weeks, but between you and me, based on your track record and today's presentation, you're exactly the kind of practitioner researcher we need. Back home, I spread Dr. Foster's research materials across my conference table, trying to comprehend the magnitude of what she'd offered. The Department of Labor grant would legitimize my work in ways I'd never considered possible. Academic credibility, federal funding, national visibility, and the chance to influence how millions of workers accessed professional development. But it would also mean fundamentally changing my business model. Instead of serving diverse clients across multiple sectors, I'd be focused on the research requirements of 5 predetermined organizations. Instead of entrepreneurial flexibility, I'd be operating within federal grant guidelines and academic timelines. I created 2 spreadsheets, one projecting revenue from continuing my current trajectory, another analyzing the research opportunity's financial and professional implications. The numbers were compelling, but the decision involved more than mathematics. My phone rang. Marcus Chen from Regional Credit Union. "Riley, I hope you're sitting down. The Credit Union Association loved your presentation at their conference last month. They want to contract with you to develop a standardized financial literacy program for all 47 member institutions." I reached for a pen, my hands suddenly unsteady. "What kind of timeline and budget are we talking about?" 18-month development and implementation timeline, $340,000 total contract value. It would establish Educational Impact Solutions as the premier provider of financial education programming for credit unions nationwide. 2 life-changing opportunities in one day. I thanked Marcus and promised to send a proposal within the week, then sat staring at my whiteboard where I'd mapped out the next quarter's modest goals. 6 hours ago, my biggest concern had been whether to hire a second contractor. Now I was facing decisions that could transform Educational Impact Solutions from a successful consulting practice into a nationally recognized organization. I met Sarah Martinez at our usual evening work spot, a 24-hour coffee shop near campus where we developed half our client materials. She took one look at my expression and ordered us both double espresso drinks. "Okay, what happened?" "You look like someone who just won the lottery and found out they have to pay taxes in gold bars." I explained both opportunities, the Department of Labor research grant and the Credit Union Association contract. Sarah listened without interruption, occasionally making notes on napkins as I outlined timelines, requirements, and implications.
So basically, you have to choose between becoming a researcher who happens to run a consulting business or a consultant who might eventually do research. That's oversimplified, but not wrong. What does your gut tell you? I considered the question. The research grant feels like validation from the academic world I thought I'd left behind, proof that my approach has scholarly merit. But the credit union contract feels like validation from the business world I'm trying to build in, proof that my approach has commercial value. Can you do both? Not simultaneously. The research grant requires exclusive focus on their participating organizations. The credit union contract requires full attention to development and implementation across 47 institutions. Sarah drummed her fingers on the table, thinking. What would each opportunity mean for the business long term? The research grant establishes academic credibility and potential policy influence, but it's time limited. After 3 years, I need to find new funding or return to regular consulting. The credit union contract establishes market dominance in a specific sector and could lead to similar contracts with other association groups. And personally, which one excites you more? The question caught me off guard. In all my analysis of financial implications and strategic considerations, I hadn't asked myself what I actually wanted to do. The credit union contract, I realized, it's applying everything I've learned to solve real problems for real people. The research grant feels like stepping backward into academia, just with better funding.
The reality was that Grandview's executive team had grown increasingly dissatisfied with Morrison's cookie-cutter approach to their rebranding campaign. They wanted innovative community engagement strategies, authentic local partnerships, and measurable impact on guest experience. Morrison had delivered expensive advertising campaigns and generic social media content. "Chelsea, come in." Patricia's voice carried the flat tone that preceded difficult conversations. The meeting lasted 23 minutes. When it ended, Chelsea walked to her car in a daze, carrying a cardboard box containing her personal belongings and a severance package that included 2 weeks' pay and a promise of neutral references. Chelsea called the family meeting for Sunday evening, arriving at her parents' house with red-rimmed eyes and the hollow expression of someone whose carefully constructed world had just collapsed. "I lost the Grandview account," she announced without preamble, "and my job." Mom dropped her coffee mug. Dad looked up from his newspaper with confusion. "Lost your job? But you just got promoted 6 months ago." The promotion was contingent on the Grandview account's success. When they terminated their contract with Morrison, the company restructured, my position was eliminated. The kitchen fell silent except for the soft classical music Mom always played during stressful family moments. "I'm sure you'll find something quickly. Your track record is excellent." "Actually, it's not. The Grandview failure is going to follow me. Corporate marketing is a small world. Word gets around when you lose a multi-million-dollar account." Dad folded his newspaper completely. "What happened? I thought everything was going well." "I thought it was too. But Grandview wanted something Morrison couldn't deliver. They wanted authentic community engagement, educational programming that actually served their guests' needs. We kept giving them traditional marketing campaigns." "Educational programming?" Mom asked. "What does that have to do with hotels?" "Financial literacy workshops for business travelers, local cultural education for tourists, professional development programs for their staff. They wanted to position themselves as partners in their guests' personal and professional growth, not just places to sleep." The irony wasn't lost on any of them, though none acknowledged it directly. I was reviewing quarterly financial reports when my assistant knocked on my office door. "Riley, there's Chelsea Henderson online too. She says she's your sister and needs to speak with you urgently." I stared at the phone, wondering what crisis could prompt Chelsea to call me at work on a Monday afternoon. We hadn't spoken in 3 months, not since she'd politely declined her latest suggestion about reconsidering corporate opportunities. "Chelsea, what's wrong?" "Riley, I need help."
Her voice sounded smaller than I'd ever heard it. "I lost my job and I'm not sure what to do next." "I'm sorry, what happened?" She explained the Grandview situation, the account termination, the corporate restructuring. As she spoke, I found myself taking notes. Not out of sisterly sympathy, but professional curiosity. The client needs she described sounded remarkably familiar. "Chelsea, can I ask you something? What specifically did Grandview want that Morrison couldn't provide?" "Community engagement programming, educational workshops that would add value for their guests and differentiate their brand from competitors. They wanted to be seen as partners in people's development, not just service providers." I set down my pen, a plan beginning to form. "Are you still in contact with anyone at Grandview?" "Well, yes. The VP of Marketing, James Rodriguez, said he was sorry to see me go." "Why?" "Because Educational Impact Solutions specializes in exactly what Grandview was looking for. We design educational programming that serves business objectives while creating genuine value for participants." Silence on the other end of the line. "Educational Impact Solutions?" "My consulting firm. We've been operating for 2 years now." "Your consulting firm?" Chelsea's voice carried a mixture of confusion and disbelief. "I thought you were still looking for academic positions." "I stopped looking for academic positions 2 years ago. I've been building a business that now employs 5 people and generates over $500,000 annually in revenue." Another silence, longer this time. "Riley, I don't understand. When did this happen? Why didn't you tell us?" I arrived at my parents' house Tuesday evening to find Chelsea already there, sitting at the kitchen table with printouts of Educational Impact Solutions websites spread in front of her, like evidence in a criminal investigation. "Riley," Mom began carefully, "Chelsea showed us your company's website. We had no idea you were running a business. You never asked what I was doing after I left teaching. You assumed I was struggling to find work." Dad examined a client testimonial page. "This says you've worked with over 30 organizations, and these revenue figures are accurate," I confirmed. "Educational Impact Solutions has been profitable since month 6 of operations." Chelsea looked up from a case study about the Credit Union Association contract. "This says you designed financial literacy programming for 47 institutions serving 200,000 members." "That's correct." "Riley," Mom said slowly, "this is exactly what Grandview Hotels was looking for. Educational programming that serves business objectives." "I know. Chelsea described their needs during our phone call yesterday." The room felt charged with tension and confusion, like the moments before a thunderstorm when the air pressure changes and everyone senses something dramatic approaching. "Why didn't you tell us?" Dad asked me directly. The question I'd been avoiding for 2 years hung in the air between us. "Because every time I mentioned my work, you suggested I consider more practical options. Every time I shared an idea, you explained why it wouldn't work. Every time I expressed confidence in my choices, you reminded me about financial security and realistic expectations."
Chelsea shifted uncomfortably. "We were trying to help." "No, you were trying to make me fit into your definition of success. And when I stopped trying to fit, I started succeeding." "I still don't understand why you kept this secret," Mom persisted. "It wasn't a secret, it was a boundary. I needed to build something without constant input about why it wouldn't work or suggestions for how I could do something more conventional instead." Dad studied the financial overview page on the website. "These numbers suggest your business is quite successful. More successful than I ever imagined possible." Chelsea looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Not condescension or concern, but something closer to awe mixed with confusion. "Riley, you make more money than I did at Morrison." Money was never the point, but yes. Educational Impact Solutions generated $640,000 in revenue last year. My personal income exceeded anything I could have made in corporate marketing. But how? You were teaching at a community college 2 years ago. I was teaching at a community college while developing educational programs that solved real problems for organizations that needed solutions. The teaching position was never the limitation you thought it was. It was the foundation for everything I built afterward. The kitchen fell silent, except for Mom's classical music and the sound of 3 people reassessing 2 years of assumptions about my life and choices. "Chelsea," I said finally, "if you're interested, I might have a solution for both your situation and Grandview's needs." She looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" Educational Impact Solutions is expanding our hospitality sector programming. We need someone with corporate marketing experience to develop client relationships and manage account implementation. Someone who understands how businesses work but can learn to think about education as a strategic tool rather than just training compliance. "You're offering me a job?" "I'm offering you an opportunity to learn a different approach to solving the problems you've been trying to solve your entire career. But it would mean starting over, learning new skills, and accepting that your sister might know something about business success." Chelsea stared at me, and for the first time in our adult lives, I saw her without the armor of professional confidence and family-approved achievement. "What would that look like?" "Account management for hospitality clients, starting with rebuilding the relationship with Grandview if you can arrange an introduction. Salary would be $75,000 to start, with performance bonuses based on client satisfaction and revenue growth." The offer hung in the air between us. Not just employment, but a complete reversal of everything our family had believed about our respective trajectories and potential. "I need to think about it," she said quietly. "Of course, take your time." As I drove home that evening, I realized something had fundamentally shifted, not just in how my family saw me, but in how I saw myself. For the first time in my life, I was the person offering solutions rather than defending choices. And it felt exactly right. Chelsea sat in the conference room I designed for client meetings, reviewing the Grandview Hotel's proposal she'd spent 6 weeks developing under my guidance. Her corporate wardrobe had evolved into something more practical, still professional, but less armor-like. The desperate confidence she'd worn at Morrison had been replaced by something quieter and more genuine. "Riley, can I ask you something?" "Of course."
How did you know this would work? When you first started Educational Impact Solutions, how did you know there was a market for what you wanted to do? I set down my red pen, considering the question. I didn't know it would work. I knew the traditional approaches weren't working, and I had ideas about why, but mostly I was tired of trying to fit into other people's definitions of what my career should look like. Weren't you scared? Terrified. But I was also tired of being afraid. There's a difference between fear that motivates you and fear that paralyzes you. Chelsea nodded slowly. I think I spent years confusing confidence with certainty, acting like I knew exactly what I was doing when really I was just following a script other people had written. James Rodriguez, Grandview's VP of Marketing, greeted us in the lobby of their downtown headquarters. He was younger than I'd expected, probably mid-30s, with the kind of focused energy that suggested someone who'd risen quickly through the ranks. "Miss Henderson, I appreciate you arranging this meeting. And Miss Henderson," he turned to Chelsea, with a smile that held no trace of awkwardness about her previous association with Morrison, "I'm glad you found a way to continue working on solutions for our challenges." The boardroom overlooked the city's financial district, floor-to-ceiling windows offering views of the buildings where Chelsea had once imagined her corporate future unfolding. Now she sat beside me, not as competition, but as partnership, preparing to present an approach that neither of us could have developed alone. Traditional hospitality marketing focuses on amenities and location, I began, clicking to our opening slide. But today's business travelers and leisure guests are looking for experiences that add value to their lives beyond just comfortable accommodations. Chelsea advanced to the next slide, her voice steady and professional. Our proposed partnership positions Grandview as a leader in guest empowerment. Instead of just providing places to stay, you become partners in your guests' personal and professional development.
We walked them through 3 program components: financial literacy workshops for business travelers, professional development seminars for corporate retreat clients, and community engagement activities that connected guests with local educational and cultural opportunities. The beauty of this approach, Chelsea explained, is that it creates loyalty based on value rather than just price or convenience. Guests don't just choose Grandview for your amenities, they choose you because you invest in their growth. James leaned forward, studying our projected outcomes data. These retention and satisfaction metrics from your credit union work are impressive, but hospitality is different. Our guests are transient by definition, which is exactly why educational programming works. People remember experiences that change how they think or what they're capable of. A comfortable bed is forgotten within days. A workshop that helps someone make better financial decisions or advance their career is remembered for years. The Grandview contract was worth $180,000 annually for 3 years, with renewal options based on performance metrics. More importantly, it established Educational Impact Solutions as the first consulting firm to specialize in educational programming for the hospitality industry. Chelsea had negotiated the final terms, drawing on her corporate experience while applying our outcomes-focused philosophy. Watching her present to Grandview's executive team, I saw someone who'd found a way to use her marketing skills in service of something meaningful rather than just profitable. "I can't believe we pulled this off," she said as we walked to our cars after the signing ceremony. "You pulled it off. I just provided the framework and background support." "No, that's not true. You created something entirely new, and then you trusted me enough to let me be part of it." We stood in the parking garage, 2 sisters who'd spent 30 years competing for approval that never really mattered, finally understanding that success wasn't a zero-sum game. "Chelsea, can I tell you something? I was never trying to prove I was better than you. I was just trying to prove I was good enough, period." "I know that now. And I think I was never trying to be better than you either. I was trying to be safe. Corporate success felt like insurance against the possibility of failure." "And how do you feel now?" She considered this. "Uncertain, but excited about the uncertainty. Does that make sense?" The family dinners had evolved into something unrecognizable from the performances they had once been. Mom still cooked elaborate meals, but the conversations no longer felt like interrogations, disguised as concern. "Tell us about the hotel project," Dad said, passing the salad bowl. "It sounds fascinating."
Chelsea brightened, launching into a description of the community partnership component she'd designed for Grandview's Chicago locations. "We're working with local financial advisors and career counselors to provide workshops that serve both hotel guests and community members. It creates authentic local connections while providing real value." "And the business results?" Mom asked. "Guest satisfaction scores have increased 23% at pilot locations," I added. "More importantly, repeat booking rates are up 31%. People are specifically choosing Grandview properties because of the educational programming." Dad shook his head in amazement. "I have to admit, 2 years ago, I couldn't have imagined this conversation. Both my daughters are running a successful business together, revolutionizing how hotels think about guest services." "We're not running it together," Chelsea clarified quickly. "Riley built Educational Impact Solutions. I just work there now." "But you're building it together now," Mom pointed out. "That's what matters." The company had grown to 12 employees across 3 departments: program development, client relations, and research and evaluation. Chelsea led the client relations team, which had expanded beyond hospitality to include partnerships with professional associations, corporate retreat centers, and executive education programs. I found her in her office late one evening, reviewing proposals for our newest initiative, a partnership with the National Association of Business Schools to develop experiential learning programs that connected academic theory with practical application. "You know," she said, without looking up from her laptop, "a year ago, I thought success meant climbing someone else's ladder as quickly as possible. And now? Now I think success means building something worth climbing toward." I sat down across from her desk, looking around at an office that had evolved from my desperate attempt to escape family expectations into something neither of us had imagined possible. "Chelsea, I need to ask you something, and I want an honest answer." "Okay."
Do you ever regret leaving corporate marketing? Miss the security of working for an established company? She closed her laptop and looked directly at me. Riley, in 18 months at Morrison, I spent most of my time trying to convince clients to buy things they didn't really need using strategies that didn't really work. In 1 year at Educational Impact Solutions, I've helped design programs that have measurably improved over 3,000 people's financial literacy, career prospects, and life satisfaction. But the uncertainty, the startup pressure, is nothing compared to the uncertainty of trying to build a career around work that doesn't matter. I make less money now than I did at Morrison, but I sleep better at night. The Adult Learning Association named Educational Impact Solutions Innovative Program of the Year for our hospitality sector work. I stood at the podium during the awards ceremony, looking out at an audience of 800 education professionals, many of whom represented the academic institutions that once felt like the only path to professional legitimacy. 2 years ago, I thought I had to choose between meaningful work and financial success. What I learned is that the choice was false. When you solve real problems for people who need solutions, success becomes inevitable. Afterwards, Dr. Amanda Foster approached me at the reception. Riley, I have to say, watching what you've built has been more valuable than any research study could have been. You've proven that education entrepreneurs can create sustainable businesses while serving the public good. Thank you. That means a lot coming from you. I have a question, though. What's next for Educational Impact Solutions? I smiled, thinking about the expansion plans Chelsea and I had been developing, the new markets we'd identified, the potential for franchising our approach to education consultants in other regions. We're just getting started. That evening, I sat alone in my office looking at the wall where we'd hung our client success stories, employee achievements, and industry recognition awards. The rejection email from Bridgeport University, the one that had felt like such devastating news 3 years earlier, was framed on my desk, not as a reminder of failure, but as evidence of how much perspective could change. My phone buzzed with a text from Chelsea. Heading home, great meeting with the Detroit Hotel Group today. I think we've got another major contract coming. I typed back, excellent work. See you tomorrow. My sister had said I'd never amount to anything. For most of my life, I'd been trying to prove her wrong.
It turned out the better approach was proving myself right. And now, sitting in the office of a company that employed my sister and dozens of other people, generating revenue that exceeded anything I dreamed possible while creating educational programs that changed lives, I finally understood something important. Success wasn't about proving anything to anyone. It was about building something so valuable that even the people who doubted you wanted to be part of it. Outside my window, the city lights twinkled like possibilities waiting to be discovered. Tomorrow, Chelsea and I would continue building something that mattered. Tonight, I was simply grateful for the journey that had brought us both home. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.